Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to the Spring Has Sprung special blind reaction to the entirety of Love, Death, and Robots. We are going to be doing this in an interesting way. Due to the length of it, I'm going to be recording my reaction to Love, Death, and Robots in a couple parts. So the reaction itself and the afterthoughts. I'll start the reaction wearing this shirt, obviously, but as the reaction goes on, it will cut to me in a different shirt. And afterthoughts, I will be wearing something as well, something other than, excuse me, other than this. I don't know what, because it just depends on what I decide to put on. But yeah. So we're at least starting this as I record this, but you're going to be seeing all of this together on Friday. So Love, Death, and Robots is a Netflix animated anthology series. It is, I want to say 18 episodes, I think. Something like that. And each episode is animated in a different way. It tells a different story, yada, yada, yada. I will say right off the bat, I have seen the first episode. In fact, it's kind of what got me interested in doing this. So that one won't be blind. But I am watching it again because I'm doing the entirety of the series here. But it won't be blind. The series, basically, it's like, again, it's all animation, all different kinds of animation. And each episode is done in a different style. And again, all the stories are different, except that they do follow the core theme of being in some way related to love, death, and or robots. It can be any of those, any combination of them. It just has some connection to those. Now, I will say that this series, at least based off of the first episode, is intended for a mature audience in terms of language, in terms of nudity and sexual content, and in terms of just some pretty intense violence and even blood and gore. So if you cannot handle that, I would honestly suggest not checking this out. But if you can handle that, and if you are of age and everything, especially, then feel free. I have no right to tell you, like, turn away if you're not 18 or over, because I watched this kind of stuff when I was under 18, so, but if you're a kid, I would suggest not watching this. If you're a kid, yeah, that's another story. But yeah, so I don't know, like, what most of any of these are. Like I said, I have only seen the first one, and I don't know any spoilers to any others. I never saw any trailers to it. I never really checked it out that much. It was just kind of, I decided to check out the first episode on a whim. But we're going to get into this, and I'm hoping to enjoy all of it. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And let's just get this started. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts, and will contain spoilers to the episodes. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we will begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so I did this basically over 3 separate days, 3 separate recordings. As you saw, it changed 3 times, cut away between during the reaction. Luckily, you got to watch it all pretty much at once, unless you chose to like watch a bit of it at a time and so on and so forth, which I do not blame you for. Because watching like 3 hours and 15 minutes worth of reaction in one go, hard to do. Even just watching them in these 3 one-hour chunks, pretty much, was pretty difficult. Because the thing is, this is an anthology series. It's not like a movie where it's one ongoing story. It's a shit ton of different stories. So when it keeps changing like that over and over again, to try and get invested in continuing to watch for a long time, it's difficult. It's really difficult. It was one of the reasons why I didn't like My Neighbors the Yamadas so much, the Studio Ghibli movie. Because all it amounted to was a series of shorts surrounding the family, and honestly, not very many of them even good. Personally, for me. Um, but yeah, it's just like, it got really hard to watch after a while. And it took me multiple watch-throughs to actually finish. And this one was definitely better than that by every stretch of the imagination. Love, Death, and Robots, phenomenal series. And I'm glad I watched it in 3 parts instead of trying to go through it all at once, because if I had tried to go through it all at once, I know I would have lost a lot of interest in it a lot quicker. Watching it in 3 separate sittings allowed me to get invested in the stories a little better, again and again each time. Because it's like I finished like watching an hour of it, and then I'm thinking like, oh, I really want to continue more. And so it's like that hype builds like over a day, and then the next day when I get to recording more of it, it's like I'm hyped again. I'm excited again. And I think splitting it into 3 parts, 3 hour long approximately chunks, was also smart to do just in general, because trying to do it in 2 chunks, it just would have felt like too much. These 3 1-hour chunks was pretty perfect in terms of just how long it was taking to really start, not really lose interest, but start to kind of get a little bogged down by it all. Because as you know, I'm not a fan of marathoning shows for the most part. It takes a lot of the excitement out of watching a show for me. I feel that that hype between episodes or whatnot is important. And so even though I did kind of marathon this in a way, it was still 3 separate sittings, and I think that was the best idea. Now, I'm not going to sit through here and talk about every single short film in this, every single episode. No, that would take forever. I could probably talk about all of that for over an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to mention which was my favorite and which was my least favorite. And here's the thing, I do plan to actually make a top 10 list for this. My top 10 favorite episodes of the series. But you're going to basically find out what my number 1 was here. So let me just get up the list of episodes so I can make sure I got it right. I can tell you what my favorite is, but I want to get the name of it too. Sunny's Edge was close, but the first one, but admittedly it was overtaken by a couple of them for me. Not by many. That one was still one of the best. Let me see. Good Hunting. That was my favorite. That was episode 8. So the general synopsis is that in early 20th century China, a boy becomes friends with a shape-shifting Huli Jing, which is a Chinese mythological creature that can be either good or bad spirits. I want to look up more about these Huli Jings. Nine-tailed fox. They're nine-tailed foxes. Okay, that makes sense. They're kind of the depiction of the nine-tailed fox mythology, which, as we saw, she was a fox spirit. After his father kills the Huli Jing's mother. Years later, living in a steampunk Hong Kong, they find each other again. And I think what really sold me about this was the beauty of it. The combination of both that steampunk futuristic style with the early 20th century mythological China style. Excuse me. Combining both of those really worked well. Having these two's relationship start to form when they were both young and build until when they're both adults and everything, to the point where he actually creates that upgrades her robotic body that was created by that horrible, evil pig of a man. But he upgrades it and everything and allows her to turn into a fox form again, something she hadn't been able to do in a long time. The characters were just really likable. The story was fascinating. The, again, art and animation was fantastic. The music score, everything about it was really great. That would definitely be my favorite. Now, if I had to say a least favorite, let's see. I'm just going to look through these real quick to make sure. And I'm going to go based not necessarily on, like, how much that kind of plot would interest me necessarily, just how much the episode itself connected to me, and how well I enjoyed it. How well I enjoyed watching it. There's none of these that I would really say I hated by any means. I actually think I really liked them all. But if I had to say a least favorite, I would say it was the last one, Secret War. I was kind of leaning towards that while watching it, but at the same time, I wasn't sure. I wanted to look through the entire list again just to make sure. I would say that. And the reason, one of the biggest reasons is I feel it was almost kind of a retread, and a less interesting retread of Suits, the fourth episode, which you remember was the farmers and all defending against those alien monsters, and then we find out they're on Saturn and stuff. I feel Suits, obviously there were some definite differences. I mean, you have farmers in the one, and then in the other you have this Russian military and all. But it's the same kind of deal, just these people trying to defeat these alien-like monsters, although in Secret War I think there are more demons, but still. These monstrous beings, and in the end there had to be a sacrifice in order to take them out. It just feels like a retread of it, and I feel Suits was just so much better. Again, not that I would say Secret War was bad by any means. It just wasn't as interesting, and honestly, throughout watching it, I was kind of bored. I wasn't connecting to the characters as much. Like, they didn't do enough to really make us love the characters. Like, a lot of the other shorts really made us love these characters. Like, Lucky 13 was fantastic at that. Shapeshifters was great, the one with the werewolves. What was another one that had really good characters? Suits. Going back to Suits, that one also had phenomenal characters. Even Three Robots, like the second one had like fantastic characters with the robots, like going through and discovering humanity after they had all passed away and stuff. Either way, so this series did a lot in terms of sexual content. And, I mean, I'm asexual, and I've talked about this before, but I want to just quickly mention it again. That does not mean that I am, like, grossed out by sex. Excuse me. It does not mean I'm repulsed by the notion or the sight of it. Honestly, I have no issue looking at nudity. I have no issue seeing people have sex or that kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me at all. And some people are surprised by that. It's like, oh, you're asexual, though. No. That just means I don't personally want to have sex. It just means that I'm not interested in engaging in sex personally. That doesn't mean that I hate sex or hate nudity. No. Not by any means. I mean, those of you on the Discord server know that with the Not Safe for Work channel that I post on every now and again. I don't hate nudity. In fact, quite the opposite, actually. I appreciate it. I think nudity in and of itself can be an art form, and as can sex in and of itself. There is nothing inherently wrong with that kind of stuff. So watching this, it's like it didn't bother me. Just like it didn't bother me when I watched Last Man. That kind of stuff, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, even in the one episode, what was it called? Which one was it? Beyond the Aquila Rift. You know, where it showed that very gratuitous scene of the guy fucking the girl who wasn't actually even there in the end. Um, it showed a very noteworthy scene of that. Like, even pressing her against the window and just, like, fucking the shit out of her against it. Like, see, that stuff doesn't bother me. It just doesn't. I don't... I'm not, like, super turned on or anything by it. Um, Again, I don't desire to have that kind of thing. I don't desire to fuck or be fucked. But again, it's like, so this stuff didn't really bother me. The death and gore doesn't bother me either. I've seen a lot of movies, a lot of shows and stuff that have plenty of death and gore. Plenty of people dying in some pretty gruesome ways. There are certain ways of death, certain methods of like blood and gore that really get to me. Eye torture, anything involving like the eyes getting plucked out or stabbed through or skewered or stuff like that, that freaks me out. Like, I can't even wear contact lenses because I can't get my fingers near my eye without my eyelid just automatically shutting tight because it freaks me out. There was also the one with the astronaut girl where her arm was freezing because she took off the glove and she had to rip off her own arm. That freaked me out. That kind of stuff. But in general, blood and gore doesn't bother me too much. I can handle it. Excuse me. Sorry about that. There's just certain aspects of it that does bother me. Certain things involved in it, but in general, I'm fine with it. And the language and everything, obviously, it doesn't bother me. I mean, language, words are words. There are some words that are hate speech, and those words I am bothered by. But in general, like swear words like fuck or shit or anything like that, I don't care. I don't care. But it's like again, hate speech words like the N word, or in terms of I think in the Good Hunting one, the main character, the Chinese guy, I think he was called by a very derogatory word for a Chinese person. I'm not going to say it. It started with a CH. Let's put it that way. But it's like, yeah, those words bother me. But in general, like swear words, no. I mean, I swear on this channel. You guys know that. Swear words do not at all bother me. The difference in art styles between these was fascinating. Some were very animated in terms of like cartoony. Others were a lot more heavily realistic in style, such as the last one there, The Secret War. And then there was that one, the Ice Age one, where it's like, oh, we're just going to have real people, live action. But everything in the freezer, all that's going on in there is animated. And that was a unique idea in and of itself. The Zima Blue one had a really stylistic, artsy style, which obviously worked for its story. And I just think that they really did a good job on all of that. On making each separate story, each separate episode feel like its own thing. The voice acting was all perfect. Like, seriously, there was no issue I had anywhere with any voice acting. All of it felt like really good for the characters. None of them seemed off. None of the voice acting itself in terms of the delivery felt off. It was great. I mean, there wasn't anything that I would say really stood out except Maurice LaMarche's narration on the yogurt one. But that's just because I know Maurice LaMarche's voice so well. Being Brain from Pinky and the Brain, Aiwei from Legend of Korra, and Chancellor Neisei from My Little Pony. So it's like, yeah, I just know his voice. So yeah, of course that's going to stand out a lot more to me. But in general, it was all fantastic. The soundtrack, the soundtrack to everything was really fantastic as well. Everything seemed to fit. Everything seemed to really give this like perfect feel to each scene in each episode, When it was meant to feel action-packed and exciting, it did. When it was meant to feel really calm and relaxing, it did. And even parts where it was meant to be really ethereal and magical, it really came across that way because of the soundtrack. So really, I don't have any real issues with this, with any of this. Like I said, my least favorite was the last one, The Secret War. But even so, I still thought it was really exceedingly well made. Um, I don't know if they're planning on doing a sequel to this or not, like another season. Let me see if I can find it here. Also, Stefan, I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. It's Serbian. It's like Kapishik or something. The guy who played Colossus in the Deadpool movies. He was in this apparently. Oh, and so was Gary Cole. He was just in an episode of Supernatural I saw. Okay. But anyways, yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any like plans for a second season. Apparently on Rotten Tomatoes, which I mean doesn't really matter, but it has a 77% rating on there, which is pretty good. This animated anthology has enough creative depth to satisfy cyberpunk aficionados who love their robots to have some heavy metal influence, referring to the movie or whatever it was called Heavy Metal, which I never actually saw, but I know of. But the series' lofty ambitions are often undercut by a preoccupation with gore and titillate. There is a lot of gore and titillation, for sure, but I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it was just part of the style. I think it was just what it needed to be. Writing for Wired, Peter Rubin praised the show and its boundary-pushing nature, saying that sometimes you just want to see Adolf Hitler suffocated by a giant mound of gelatin. Yeah, seriously, that was a total what the fuck moment. But it was funny as hell. Hmm. Okay, apparently the guy who voices Colossus, he was in the Secret War one, which makes sense. John DiMaggio was in the Ice Age one? Really? He must have played one of those two people who were like sitting there in the freezer world. Because there were two people who were sitting there on like a support beam and like saying, "Who are these idiots looking at us?" all day. Like, yeah, because there's four people listed for that one, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Topher Grace were the two live action ones. So John DiMaggio and Roger Craig Smith must have been the ones in the freezer. Okay. I can't see anything referencing whether or not there's a second season planned. Nothing's really saying one way or the other. But either way, I thought this was great. I thought it was a fantastic series. Definitely something I'm very glad to have watched. Like, really glad to have watched. I wouldn't say like this is a favorite series of all time or anything, but this is something I would like to see a second season to, for sure. I would love to see it continue. They could do so much with these concepts. And with just the style that they do this in with the anthology. Obviously having different styles and different concepts each time. So there's so much they could do. I just kind of hope they do get a second season. Either way, tell me in the comments below what you thought of Love, Death, and Robots. What did you think of the stories? What did you think of the characters, of the art styles, the animation styles, all of it? Tell me your thoughts on all of that and more in the comments below. And thank you for tuning in to this really special reaction for the Spring Has Sprung special. Just as a reminder, since you are watching this on Friday, this is the second to last thing for the Spring Has Sprung special, because I'll probably put up the top 10 for Friday before this. After this, on Saturday, you will be seeing another special video, and that'll kind of close out the special. I will say, though, that this kind of thing won't happen all the time. reacting to an entire series, even in multiple instances like I did here with like that much of a viewing time. I'm not going to do that often. But like I said, I do plan to make a top 10 for my 10 favorite shorts in this. I don't know when it will happen. I want to make it as soon as possible, but you never know. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Obviously, it's not part of this week's top 10s, but maybe next week I'll get to it. Either way, tell me in the comments below, yeah, like I said, what you thought, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,